The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on business continuity planning. More specifically, we're learning today about how to prepare and recover your business from disasters. Here's what we've got in store for you today. First up, we're just going to do a quick intro and orientation. We're then going to look at some key points from the workbook, because a workbook was made available to you pre-webinar. Now, I understand many of you are probably busy business owners, and whilst you may have seen that link and intended to download it or actually read it and work through it, you may or may not have had the time. If you haven't had the time, I hope today's session really prompts you to retake a look at that, because there are some wonderful exercises in there. And a few points I'll be referring to in the slides today will be directing you back to that workbook. We'll then have a quick review and there'll be time for questions. And I'll introduce you to a guest of ours in just a moment, who you might be really interested in talking to and asking some questions, someone who's actually lived through a recent disaster. So my name is Yvette Adams, and we're very excited to be delivering this webinar on behalf of DD, which is otherwise known as the Department of Employment, Economic Development and Innovation. No wonder we call it DD, huh? It's a bit of a mouthful. So that's a division of the Queensland Government. And some background on us and the Creative Collective, my company, as to why we're delivering these. We've been recognised as a multi-award winning business. We're really proud of that fact. I've started 4 different businesses from scratch, some of which I have sold, so hopefully I can share some of my business knowledge with you today. So now my focus is the Creative Collective. We have a franchise network, and our services is sort of marketing, everything creative. We say we're all creative things to all people, so website design and development, graphic design and print, PR and marketing, lots of social media these days and so on. So we work with everyone from startups right through to very big companies. So wherever you're based and however big you are, we are used to working with businesses quite possibly from your industry and of your size. I also like to drop in that I'm a mother. I need to update that slide. Mine are now 4 and 7, because I do know what the juggle is like of being a parent and a business owner too. But I really love training and assisting others. Now, I just want to make the attendees aware today of some of the functionality on the GoToWebinar system. So you should see on your screen a little red arrow. So it's red with a white sort of arrow. And if you can't see anything expanded, you can only see one strip of a bunch of little buttons. I'd like you to click on that red arrow now, which will expand your entire control panel. Now within there is a chat area. So there should be a little plus button and the word chat right down the bottom. So if you expand that, you're very welcome to type us a message either to the whole audience if I'm asking for contributions from you, or if you've got a technical question, please direct those to Jag Quimby, who's listed as an organiser. He's our tech specialist and he'd be more than happy to help you. So this is not school. We do like you to interact, and we don't want you to go to sleep in your lunch hour on with us. So just to see that you are awake, you are here, I'd like you to now try using the raise the hand function. So next to your name you should see the option to do a little hand, and I'd like you to place that hand up by clicking on it now. So Joseph's managed to find that okay. Tanya has as well. Thank you very much. How about you, Matthew, Fortini and Adam? Thank you for raising your hand, Adam. Fortini, could you try it? Matthew? And if you can't find it, yay, we've all got it. Great. So we're all live. We all know how to put that hand up. Now a little tip. When you put it up, you've got to put it down again. So just click on it again, and then I know your question's been answered, you've indicated, and we've finished there. So anyway, let's move on with today's session. So today's session is all about business continuity planning. And as you'll find out if you go through the workbook in more detail, everything draws back to this little principle in this diagram. We call it the PPRR approach to emergency or disaster management. Now the P, and we'll go into each of these and explore them a little bit more throughout the duration of today, the P stands for prevention, because as the old adage goes, prevention is always better than the cure. There's preparedness, like the old Boy Scouts motto, we do need to be prepared for natural disasters, because hey, we live in Queensland and these things just happen. So we know they're a possibility, so why don't we get prepared? I really actually want to applaud you at this point for just getting on today's session, because it's easy when you're busy not to place a priority on this, but as many business owners very unfortunately found out through the summer of disasters, as it was known, it can cause real problems with your business if you're not prepared. There's also a response. So when things happen, how should you respond? When should you respond? Who else can help you? And then how do you recover from this as well? So all of these very much link in together. Now at this point, I would like to introduce our guest speaker who's very generously given up his time today, and his name is Michael Crowley from Embroid Me in Milton, Brisbane. Michael, welcome to today's call.
G'day there, how are you?
Good, thank you, Michael. So there's a pretty picture of Michael smiling, leaning on his wares there. So tell us a little bit about your business, would you, Michael?
Yeah, sure, Yvette. Hi everyone. I have the Embroid Me franchise in Milton, which is on the edge of Brisbane CBD. I've had this business for 6 years. We sell uniforms and sportswear, workwear, things like that. We do embroidery and screen printing. So we have a variety of machines and a wide range of customers.
Sure. So as we can all see on the screen there though, and as you've just explained, you're dealing with a lot of stock and a lot of machinery, and most unfortunately you were based pretty close to where those floods hit back in January, weren't you, in Brisbane there?
I was, yeah, right in the middle.
Right in the middle. And when we had a little chat earlier, you were saying to me that you knew these floods were coming as a result of what? A radio announcement, wasn't it?
Yeah, prior to during the day leading up to the worst of the floods, the government was putting ads out saying, you know, we are going to get flooded. Contact the Bureau of Meteorology or the Brisbane City Council to, you know, find out what's happening. I did that, and you ring up and they ask your address and said, oh yeah, okay, we know exactly where you are, and yes, the predicted flood for your area is 0.8 of a metre.
And what eventuated, Michael?
Yeah, a little bit more than that. We got 2.9 metres of water through here.
I mean, that's, as you were explaining to me, more than double, and we might save the story for a little bit more. We'll sort of tell it throughout the duration of the webinar, but we can see some figures on screen there. You have very unfortunately suffered some massive losses to business, and you're only, where are you at right now 6 months on? Are you back in those premises?
Yeah, we're back in the premises. We we're physically back and happening. We're financially, we're still a disaster. So depends which way you want to look at it, but yes, with a tremendous amount of help from friends and suppliers and everybody like that, we rebuilt totally. We fitted the shop out again. We're trading. We've begged, borrowed, been given things, and certainly from a physical point of view, we're here and we're in business and we're serving customers again. Good
on you for just being so resilient. So let's sort of wind the clock back, and I'm going to draw on, I guess, what you did have in place, and maybe this is a bit of a wake-up call for the other businesses online. Actually, just at this point, I'd like you to, if you're listening in, raise your hand if you lived through the Queensland floods. You were affected yourself by those recently. Anyone who personally experienced those as well? Joseph did. Okay. Could you maybe text chat us, Joseph, and tell us where you were and what happened to you, and we might involve you later on that front. Was anyone on the call affected by Cyclone Yassi at all in Queensland earlier this year? Any hands up on that front? Doesn't look like it. And final question, has anyone actually experienced a natural disaster of any other kind in their lifetimes? Adam has. Gosh, you others are just as lucky as me. I can't say I have, so very, very lucky. Right, back to these PPRR. First step, prevention. So we need to evaluate risk when preparing for a disaster. So step one, we need to identify risks that could impact on our business, analyse those risks and assess their impacts, evaluate the risks, prioritise them, treat them, and develop a risk management plan. Now, Michael, did you have any kind of risk management plan in place before the disaster you experienced?
Not related to the disaster I experienced. Fortunately, my IT consultant is a very, very he nags me all the time. So some years ago, having experienced computer failure, we actually had in place a backup system for all our computers, which was literally just copying everything to a separate hard drive. And we did that because we'd had a computer failure once that cost me a lot of money. And then Sav's instructions to me were, if the building catches fire, Michael, just take the box. And that was the total plan that I had, was that if anything goes wrong, grab the little computer box, the backup, and run.
Sure. Well, that's something. It's better than nothing, and I know there were a lot of business owners that didn't even have that much, and we'll explore a little bit more what your options are for backing up your data and keeping them safe, because most businesses these days do rely on computers quite heavily, so really good idea to have that box, and good on you for having a good IT person, and I bet you're grateful for that nagging nowadays.
Oh, I am very grateful to Sav. He's saved me.
He did. Now, well, the other point to make is that in some cases we talk to business owners and they did have a risk management in place, but it's been a while since they reviewed it. So it's not something that you can do once. So I want to really hit home with the fact that if you use the risk management strategies that are in that workbook and you leave here thinking, yep, I'm going to make a priority, I get it now, that's great. But don't forget to re-look at it every now and then. Because maybe you've looked at it through the eyes of floods, but hey, you know what? I saw a thing on the news recently which was saying that often after a big flood season can come a big fire season, and they're actually predicting in Queensland that we could be hit by some significant bushfires this coming summer. So, make sure you're looking at it from all angles. So new risks are created as you buy new equipment, as new staff come into play, as you move premises, etc. So anytime you have a significant change in your business, it's probably time to look at that again. Sometimes the risks you did have are increased or decreased. Sometimes they don't exist anymore. Sometimes the priority changes because maybe Michael might have, say, invested in a bigger piece of equipment which he really heavily relies on with the advent of that new equipment. So if he has got a plan that means if that equipment's out of action, he can continue business, which is why we can call this business continuity planning. That's a really good idea. So some other reasons why you would want to look at a risk management plan. One is business continuity, as I've just touched on, but the other is it can actually reduce your insurance premiums. Now that picture there is from the Whitsundays, and we've had on previous sessions of this very webinar a woman called Alex Hawson from Whitsunday Rent-A-Yacht. Now up there, they've been hammered by a few cyclones a few times, and of course their insurance companies start getting a bit edgy because they're dealing with these very expensive yachts. Now, in order for her to actually get insured again after one particularly bad bout, she had to show them the risk management plan. And I'm not 100% sure, but what would be your comment on this, Michael? When you went through to the insurance company, if you could have shown them, I had this risk management plan and I acted on it, would that have helped you in any way?
It actually has helped, yeah, in that the insurance company starts off pretty hostile because they don't want to pay out. But because I showed them that we had saved our data and that we were using that to get back into business as quickly as we could, and that we had done everything we could to minimise the damage, that actually sort of turned their attitude around, and they became a lot friendlier and more helpful after that.
Sure. And I guess it's kind of like the analogy or scenario where you go to the bank, and if you're looking for money to borrow, if you've got a business plan, they're more likely to give it to you because they can see you're an astute business owner. Same goes with the insurance companies. If you're looking to start a new insurance premium, renew it, whether you've had a disaster or not, or you're actually looking to get insurance paid out, if you've got that sort of plan, that proof that you've thought about this, and like you say, Michael, you've done everything you can, they're more likely to be a little bit more kind to you, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, the other thing is that it can reduce the time when the business may be unable to operate. So, Michael, when it came to insurance for you, how long did it take to get paid out, to get back and operating? Where were you sourcing help and funds to get things back on track?
That's a sort of it's a bit hard to answer in a way.
Yeah.
The insurance I had was very small, so as I said to you previously, the payout was less than 1/4 of what I lost. But the fact that I got anything at all sets me apart as luckier than most people. And certainly once we could demonstrate that everything was destroyed here, then they were fairly good in that they paid reasonably quickly and paid in full, even though it wasn't very much. We used that to keep us going while we basically rebuilt and traded. We did use, because I do embroidery, basically what I did was outsource the work to my competitors and got them to contract embroiderers and got them to do a lot of the work for me, so that even though I wasn't making a profit, I was retaining my customers, so that now that we're back in full swing, we've kept all our customers and we haven't lost any.
Isn't that a fantastic strategy to keep business continuing? And I mean, I've always been of the philosophy there's more than enough work for everyone, and if we band together sometimes with our competitors, there can be some really good outcomes. And gosh, that's a good idea that you had there. Was that suggested to you, or it was just something you thought of out of your own?
Sheer desperation. I suppose that there's some, in any industry, although you compete, there's some guys you get along well with, yeah, and there's some people you can't stand.
Sure.
So, you know, I went to the ones that I got along well with and said, listen, you know, what do you think? You'll make the money, but I keep the customers. And, I mean, they all made good money out of me. No one did it for free. But on the other hand, they all did it, the ones I, sort of the 3 or 4 people I approached. And that means now when I'm completely back in business, I've still got those customers.
It was an excellent strategy and a good one for some people here to perhaps consider, maybe taking those competitors out for a coffee or having a beer with them at the pub and saying, hey, if anything should happen, would you help me out? A key point there in the middle, which I would like to highlight and continue moving along through this great content, is that you need to have a plan to replace key personnel, because even if disaster doesn't strike, if you lose key personnel, if you've ever experienced that as a business owner, it can be pretty, it can have quite a big impact on your business. The more senior they get, the longer they've been there, the more unique a role they have where no one else knows how to do what they do, the more at risk you are. So, you know, how quickly can you mobilise a recruitment campaign? Do you have contractors you use who could step into that role at short notice and so on? And, you know, in disasters, sometimes the real terrible stuff happens where key personnel are actually injured, or even, touch wood, doesn't happen to you, pass on. So these are all good reasons to have a plan for key personnel as well. So do give that some thought. The other one is to reduce the loss or damage to machinery. So, Michael, when we were speaking, you were saying that, you know, the Bureau of Meteorology said you're going to get a 0.8 or 0.9 flood. So you diligently got the forklift out, lifted the expensive machinery as high as you could to what, 2 metres?
Yeah, we have a lot of heavy metal racking here, so although the machinery is quite big, we grabbed the forklift and chucked it all up to the top of the racks, which is 2 metres off the ground, and took all our expensive display cabinets and you know, things like that, and forklifted it all up on top of the racks. Then we sandbagged the doors to 1.5 metres. As I said to you, the government predicted a 0.8 of a metre flood, so we doubled that and said, oh, it'll go to 1.6, just as a precautionary measure. So we sandbagged everything, sandbagged the doors, windows, put plastic up, all of that sort of thing, all up to 1.5 metres, put all the machinery and cabinets and everything up at 2 metres on the top of the racks, and at 2.9 metres that was just enough to go over the top of everything.
Oh, wow. And you were telling me as well, you'd only recently invested in a really expensive piece of equipment, hadn't you?
Well, that's it. Last year my business did very well, so in December we moved into new premises, these premises, and I fitted it all out. So went to the bank, borrowed the money to do a new fit out, got a nice shiny new machine to deal with the increased business because things have been pretty good. Of course, borrowed money to do that, and yeah, then we went up the creek without a paddle, didn't we?
Yeah, and I mean, what a difficult thing, because it was so unpredicted and your timing is just so tragic, it being the month after. But you're also saying how, you know, you had extended your credit, so to speak, to access that, and business was going good, and how are you to know? But that has left you in the difficult position of not being able to access additional funds to kind of tide the business over in between, hasn't it?
That's right. So now I'm in the position where, although I've physically rebuilt the business, financially it's a day-to-day proposition. So if the phone doesn't ring, like, I don't know about the folks who are listening to this today, but most here in Brisbane, most people say July is pretty quiet. Business is not exactly booming in July, if outside of the mining industry. So, you know, if the phone doesn't ring today and I don't make some sales, it's a pretty stressful thing, because you've got to pay back. You borrow money, you've got to pay it back. And although institutions have been very nice and said, oh look, we'll give you an extra 30 days to find the money and things like that, even so, in the end, that was 6 months ago. People now say, look, Michael, you know, we gave you a bit of extra time. Do you think you can start making your payments? And so if I don't make sales every day, there's no more overdraft, there's no more bank loan. If I don't make sales every day, it gets a little bit stressful.
Fair enough. Poor you is all I can say. I mean, you're just a trooper for getting back in there and continuing with business. So look, if you're going to do this risk plan and some of these things we've talked about, the screen I've just pulled up gives you an idea of the types of headings you might like to list. So you can draw this up on a piece of paper if you like. You can type it up in an Excel spreadsheet or Word, whatever you prefer to use. So it's a case of going through and identifying the risks, describing it, because you would want this to be able to be picked up by somebody else and understood. The likelihood of that happening, is it high, is it medium, is it low? What would be the consequences of that happening? The mitigation, that means what would you do to prevent this risk and what would you do to, you know, minimize it, and actions needed. So for instance, I mean, Michael, what's a risk that now you are aware, you know, you should have identified, and what's a mitigation or thing you could have done in hindsight?
Well, hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Sure.
The thing we got right was to take the data backup out of here, and we grabbed that. I gave it to someone. That was the thing we got right. We could have very easily backed the truck up and put everything in a truck and driven off. So if I look at it now, rather than thinking of any location as a fortress that can be defended, it's better to think of it as just a staging point. And yeah, had I backed the truck up, I had about 5 hours between the time we got the flood warning and when the flood waters hit the front door. And 5 hours is plenty to put a truck up, chuck a couple of machines and cabinets and things on and drive off and park it at the top of the hill. So I would certainly have done that differently had I been aware that the flood was going to be as serious as it became.
Sure. And I mean, we're talking floods very much so given Michael's experience, but you know, in that risk column, that first column there, I'd be encouraging all businesses to list things like flood, risk, loss of key personnel, fire, theft. There's so many potential risks as business owners we all face at any time, loss of data, etc. So please go through that exercise. If you do one thing, go and look at that risk management plan in the workbook and go through it. Maybe even make it something that you chair at your next staff meeting. Maybe even talk about it if you are a solopreneur with your partner or friends, and getting their ideas on what would be the risk, helping them to help you identify those, and trying to get some plans in place. Now, insurance is a big one, and we've all seen in the media how many people thought they were insured, weren't insured at all for floods in some cases, in many cases actually. So it's really important to ask yourself right now, and I hope this webinar is a good prompt, what insurances do you have in place right now today? When was the last time you updated them? Have you ever got professional advice? Because sometimes just going out and grabbing it off the internet or talking to one person and with your limited knowledge of insurance is really not enough. And there are, just like there are mortgage brokers out there, there are insurance brokers who deal with a range of companies and who can advise you on the people who might be able to best service your insurance requirements. You also need to consider whether your circumstances have changed, and it's worth noting as well that some insurance companies change their policies and you need to review those. Often they send them out, so it's all that small print you may or may not be bothered reading, but that can really come into play when it comes to a case of a disaster. To tell you a story related to the Christchurch quake, which of course is another natural disaster our friends across the Tasman have had to encounter this year. They had the big earthquake in September last year, and as a result there was a company, AMI, not the same AMI as in Australia, another company, which was the best insurer. they came out sort of shining. So a lot of people moved their business to them. Indeed, 80% of Christchurch was believed to be insured by that one company. And then what happened was, unbeknownst to everyone, as a result of that September earthquake, their insurance rating was downgraded from a A++ or a AAA or whatever it is in the insurance terms to a B or something like that, because the underwriters globally felt there was a high risk and that they couldn't pay out should there be another major disaster. And what do you know, in February there was. So all these poor people had moved their business over to this insurer thinking it was safe as houses, as the saying goes. Actually found out longer term it wasn't. So pretty important to be pretty diligent in that regard. Any other tips from you, Michael, on insurance, stuff you've learned through going through what you have?
Well, I would endorse totally your suggestion to get an insurance broker. The insurance broker is actually on my side, so he makes his money like out of serving me well, and my insurance broker has been very helpful, whereas my insurance company, obviously this is a broadcast so I can't say what I really think, the insurance companies they don't want to give you the money. They will do anything to not give you the money. Whereas an insurance broker, he's only going to get work if I'm happy. So having an insurance broker for me was a huge benefit.
Sure, and I mean, let's face it, as business owners, we've got too many things to do. We wear too many hats. So let's get specialists in areas where we can cut ourselves some slack, get a bit of expertise on board, and you know what, you're not paying any more for utilising that service anyway, so why wouldn't you?
Actually, it saves you money because they're happy to shop around and find you a better price. So I ended up getting a better insurance policy and paying slightly less for it because I used a broker.
Isn't that good? So good idea to go to the insurance brokers. And here's another little tip. If you're not sure what insurance broker or company might suit you, you can also contact the insurance ombudsman who deals with any issues with insurance companies. But they obviously have a very good understanding of insurance companies and brokers across Queensland and indeed Australia, and you're welcome to contact them. They have a 1300 number available online and say, you know, this is my industry, this is the type of business I am, who would you suggest? And they can fast track that. Might save you some internet searches or yellow page searches. All right, moving on. What's your plan B, C and D? No, I didn't even say A, because we've all often got one plan, but you need a second, third and fourth, maybe even a fifth plan. So we're talking contingency and backup plans. Now, quality control processes can help minimise risk. So, you know, I guess this is against risk of perhaps legal persecution. Let's say, you know, you're a food manufacturer and someone eats something and falls ill from it. Well, you need to obviously have good quality control processes in place. But similarly, other businesses don't always think of themselves in that manner, and getting good control processes in place can help. Staff training can minimise risk as well, because if staff don't know what's required of them or the manner in which it's required, they can't actually, you know, perform it, perhaps the task to the level that you would like. Workplace health and safety, massive issue. A lot of business owners don't realise they can and will be held personally liable in the event of an accident. And there are services from Workplace Health and Safety Queensland where they will send out workplace health and safety officers for free to your offices, not to reprimand you, not to smack you on the hand and tell you you're doing it all wrong, but actually to sit down with you, identify the risks, help you work through them and provide all the support they can. If you're interested, we did a 1-hour webinar which was recorded, which is available on our YouTube account, which I will show you at the end. So you can feel free to download that and watch that at your leisure and maybe get some ideas too. Maintaining facilities, plant and equipment. I mean, the equipment you deal with, Michael, there must be a little element of danger in there for staff if they're not using it correctly.
Oh, absolutely. We run embroidery machines, so you've got, you know, lots and lots of very sharp needles running up and down at 1,000 stitches a minute. It'll take your fingers off. So yeah, we do have some very strict rules about who's allowed to use them and when they're allowed to use them.
And you would have a regular kind of maintenance regime, I presume, as well, to make sure they're continuing to operate. Because the last thing you need now is for one of those machines to break down, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they're brand new machines, so if they break down now, then I give up. So I think these machines will keep running for a fair while.
Good on you. Look, security is obviously an important one with theft, but of course we have seen instances with earthquakes and even, unfortunately, the floods of looting. So security is quite important through natural disasters. Having pre-storm and cyclone season preparedness. You know, we're not in storm season now in Queensland, but before you know it, it's only another quarter, it will be on our doorstep again. So what a great time. You've got 3 months ahead of you to start thinking towards that season and looking to see what you can do in your business to keep everyone and everything safe. Appropriate systems and controls, the backups of computer data off-site. I'm a big fan, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a moment, but of cloud computing. There are so many great systems available online now where you can literally have all your accounts data online, accessible anytime, with no need to do, you know, disk backups and getting things off-site. It can just sit on the internet, so that's not a bad option. Similarly goes for your estimating, even all your actual data. So you can actually take a copy off-site, which is a good idea. You may even like to have one on the internet in case that should get damaged or lost as well. Hiring carefully is really important, and having means to monitor that they're not misappropriating funds, etc. I mean, that's a risk in business. That can stop you continuing business. And unfortunately, given the economic climate, some people are getting pretty desperate. And I know locally here, I don't know about where you guys are, there's been a few stories in the paper of people, you know, taking significant amounts out of companies, which has really hurt them. Cloud computing, we've mentioned. Emergency procedures and kits. I'll talk about those more in a moment. Evacuation plans, regular drills and tests. So evacuation, Michael, on the day it happened, it was a weekday. It was sort of just after holidays, but did you have staff? Did you have to evacuate? What did you do?
No, on the day it happened, it was on a Tuesday when the floodwaters came up. I was working here on my own. Mm-hmm. So because we shut down over Christmas, and my staff weren't due back until Wednesday, till the following day.
Right.
So I was here on my own. So the evacuation in the end was just me realising that my car had started floating and I better leave.
Wow. But now you would have learnt from that though. So what if it did happen on a day where you had staff you were responsible for? Do you have an evacuation plan now?
Well, I made a couple of my mates came in to help me. And so, like when we were driving the forklift and that, a couple of guys came around and we were trying to sandbag everything, and at one point I just turned around to them and said, look, get out of here. I can't be responsible for you, and look how fast that water's coming up. My evacuation plan in the end is a very unsophisticated one. Get out of here. Nothing's worth it.
Yeah,
there's
common
nothing
sense,
here. No, there's nothing worth getting hurt for. These are my mates, or if it was your staff, or if it was your family. What's worth getting hurt for? No, just get out of here.
Yeah.
In the end, what the heck? You know, I'd rather everyone's alive and we all sit at the pub and bitch about it than to think that we stayed 1 minute too long and that somebody got hurt.
Sure. Very good priorities there, Michael. Onto this preparedness. So I've talked about at the very start of today that, you know, the Boy Scouts had that motto, and there it is, we're prepared. So, you know, I want you to ask yourselves what you can do to prepare. So don't ever think it won't happen to me. And I think by the very fact you're actually on here today, you realise that. But you've got to sort of be proactive and plan ahead. So if you're thinking of things like cyclones, for instance, or storms even, consider window strengths. It's often something that gets forgotten. If you do have a retail front, these can be very expensive to replace. So there's a great little link there for the Window Film Association of Australia and New Zealand, who put out some great resources and tips on what you should do. So you can see a gentleman there, best practice, putting a bit of an X with the correct type of tape. So maybe making sure if you do have a retail space that you have got some of that sort of tape on hand. Other staff know where it is. If you're not there, say you're on holiday or just out of the office, they know exactly what to do. Because also, apart from the cost of losing the windows, they can be very dangerous when they go flying for your staff, and I'm sure you'd hate to think anything would happen to them. And sounds like a sensible one if you've always lived in Queensland and you've lived through cyclones, but in case you hadn't noticed from my accent, I'm a Kiwi and I've never experienced a cyclone. So simple tips like staying away from windows and going in the bathroom with a mattress, or a friend even told me to put the thongs on, wear the rubber, soled shoes around the house so as not to get any electrical shocks, were tips that I just hadn't even thought of. So, don't forget that sometimes your staff or visitors to your premises may be the same. They may not be from Queensland. They may not have experience, and please do take time to take care of them and communicate with them what is necessary in any given disaster as well. Now here's another little tip, a takeaway, a business impact analysis. So it sounds all very tricky and high tech, or otherwise known as a BIA, but again what you can see on screen there is taken straight out of that workbook. So apart from the risk management assessment, you need to also do one of these, because you need to work out, helps you prioritize what the impact of these things would be on your business. So, what was the biggest impact on your business? If you could pick one thing, Michael, what would have been listed there first if you were to write this out now?
The production ability, the loss of the machines.
Yeah, because if you haven't got those, you can't function, can you?
No, because even though, for example, we didn't have any phones, people would still drop in. Customers would still come by and say, hey, you back in business? And people, if they can't get you on the phone, they come and say, hey, how you doing? Do you want some work? But we couldn't make anything. We didn't have any machines. So all these people are trying to give me work and trying to give me money, and I'm standing at the front door saying, oh, I can't do it.
Yeah, sure. So if it was me being asked that question, what was the number one business activity? And I'd suggest you go through and do a huge big brain dump, not just one, but just to get you guys in the mode of this. Mine would probably be internet use. I'd put that down as critical. We can't do our work without connection to the internet. So should be a storm or a power outage of some kind that's going to impact on the internet. One of my I guess mitigations could be that I equip my staff with mobile USBs, which may or may not work, or which we get the ability to tether our phones as well as another option, for instance. Or that we even, if worst came to worst and it was ongoing, actually made a plan to get to another location that had internet. Say, for instance, at the time of the floods, Melbourne was a little bit of a safe haven, or Perth or something like that. So give it some thought as to what your BIA could look like. Right, moving on to response. We've done the 2 Ps. We're on to response. How will you respond? So your response, Michael, was to get some mates in because your staff weren't there, and you pretty much had to deal with it on your own. It wasn't sort of a team effort once they left, it sounds like.
Yeah, the sort of the response is the immediate, Yvette, if you mean sort of the immediate day or two, was, I had a couple of mates come in and we shifted everything. We borrowed a forklift, as I said, put everything up. But once you've done a certain amount, we went to the bottle shop and got a slab and went home.
Good on you.
There's nothing you can do. You just sit there and watch the water go through. Then when I came back after the flood, so we came back on I was the first one. I'm in a sort of a bit of an estate, so there's 30 other businesses here with me. And I was the first one back in. I had to drain the water out of the shop, and I waded in. And then my family, my friends, and you saw that in the newspaper, the Mud Army, complete strangers. People just came and helped, and we started cleaning it out and trying to sort out what was what.
It's just incredible response.
That covers that first week.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's how you dealt with it, and it sounds like you just, did such an amazing thing for what you're up against. I guess on screen are just a few more tips that if you are in a position where you've perhaps got responsibility for a bigger staff, perhaps if Michael had a staff there, it can be useful to appoint a team leader. I mean, some people are good in crises, and others just fall to pieces. So, think about in your staff, are you that person? Or are you going to be dealing with other stuff? Maybe talking to insurance people and getting onto media or communicating with clients might be your highest priority. Is there someone else in your staff that perhaps can coordinate the cleanup, for instance, in that case? Sometimes having that spokesperson, again, you may or may not be confident in public speaking or dealing with the media. Perhaps you have a PR or marketing person you can call on, or just a mate or a colleague or someone who's good with that kind of thing. So again, think about the stuff before it happens, so then you just start going through the paces rather than having to think on your feet amongst all the stress, because sometimes, I imagine, Michael, you're probably a bit sleep deprived. Would I be right? At the time, were you getting much sleep?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please, Yvette?
I just said, I imagine you might have been a bit sleep deprived, and it might have been a bit hard to think on your feet at times. So it could have been good to kind of think ahead with what your response had been.
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the things was that I am 48 years of age. I'm not particularly fit. I'm not unfit, but I'm not particularly fit. And I spend a week labouring, lifting sandbags and shoveling mud and, ripping down walls. By the end of that first 7 days, I was exhausted. So, yeah, I wasn't functioning particularly well. And when what you say is that you should have a spokesperson or something, I had an insurance person come through who just happened to say the wrong thing. And, yeah, I lost my temper. And they certainly learned a whole new vocabulary, I'm sure. But, I regret that. I mean, the guy perhaps was less than tactful in what he said, but he certainly didn't deserve the spray that I gave him. And yeah, it would have been great if I could have let someone else talk to them. But in a small business, you do tend to have to do everything.
Of course you do. All right, so one really good suggestion, and again a good take-home for today, is that you get some kind of kit together. Michael talked about the black box, the data that he grabbed, but I imagine that having a kit that sort of resembled something more of this could have been helpful, maybe, Michael, where you had the actual emergency supplies in there, those key documents, like, for instance, your insurance company and I don't know, clients, etc. Were they all on that data, or did you have some that you were like, oh God, that was that paperwork and it's being destroyed?
Well, I'd like to say two things. I'm looking at this picture of your incident response plan. I don't see the six-pack in there anywhere. So I'm not sure what emergencies you've survived, but you're not going to get far without at least a six-pack.
Maybe that's in the drink bottle. It might be vodka.
Yeah, it should be. Secondly, fortunately, just about everything was on the computers. That's why Sav's always telling me to save it and take. But we have had some problems because we lost a lot of paperwork, and in trying to process the claim with the insurance company, when you turn around to them and say, well, I haven't got any paperwork, it's all gone down the river, they say, oh, well, that's too bad, you'll just have to recreate it all. Well, that's been an additional cost to me, both in time and money, to go and dig out old references or resources or whatever, and yeah, so something like this would have been great. You're quite right.
And I've heard a lot of stories too of the recent natural disasters where the owners of the business, people responsible, because it was holiday time, were actually out of the country or out of the state. So if it was up to a colleague to look after this, if they can grab a bag and it has got a checklist of things that they need to do, call the clients, call the suppliers, call the insurance company, I'm pretty sure that you'd be very glad you had taken the time to create that once they got into swing. A list of people who have the authority to make decisions should something occur. Now, this one's an important one and often forgotten as well. An event log to record information, decisions and actions in the period immediately after, because if there is an injury, there is someone killed, there is some major insurance consequence, that also can be your saviour, because you can use that to prove this is what I did, I acted as safely and carefully as I could, and it could save you bacon pretty much. We've talked about cloud computing systems, so like I said, that's online systems where everything's housed and accessible online on the internet. Google Docs, if you're not aware of it, is a free service and under username and password, so it is safe, although there's a few disclaimers around that. And I really encourage you to look at our cloud computing webinar, which we've done in the past, also available on our YouTube, where we talk about that. But even if you can scan and upload those key insurance documents, your business registration, whatever's important to you to operate in business, your contact lists, stuff that you just couldn't do without should a disaster strike. Really good idea to get it up there. And hey, if you don't have time, delegate it. Pay a student some bucks to come in and do it as a one-off and get it up there, or make it somebody in the office's role, you know, an admin type staff member. Contact databases I've talked about, a list of people, and emergency kits and things. Anything else like that you wish that you just had in place at all, Michael, and that grab bag, if you like?
In the grab bag, probably
apart from
the
beer?
Contact list. Yeah, apart from beer. Yeah. The contact list. We out of all of that, and I think everything you've got there is fantastic, the one thing that we really wished we'd had was a contact list. And I suppose having to rebuild that slowed us down. I mean, I wished I'd had a disaster plan to begin with, but that's just the benefit of hindsight, isn't it?
Sure.
But out of all those things, then I think the thing that we struggled with was the contact list.
Sure. Contacts, you don't have a business without them, some say, and yeah, just being able to get to them quickly and efficiently is pretty important because people want to know what's happening. So that leads us really well onto this next slide, which is mobilizing a response. So you've really got to work out what the problem is and determine the strategy. How are you going to react? It's a good idea to respond quickly and effectively. The first hour is actually vital. Now, Twitter, people used to say, what's this Twitter? You go on there and say you're having a coffee, so what? But I believe through the most recent natural disasters, Twitter really emerged as something that could be very useful in a disaster. And actually, Twitter, way back in 2007, as you can see, these posts were used when San Diego had some quite significant bushfires. And it's a way for the media to get immediate information. There have been instances of people being rescued in the floods, in the cyclones, and in the earthquakes via Twitter. And if you have a database of your key clients and suppliers, I realise not everyone's on there, but perhaps it's a compelling reason to get on there. It's very easy on your mobile phone to jot a quick response that we are closing our shop, it's flooded, we will be in touch with more updates, and then provide more updates as they become available, because often the computers are lost, they're down, etc., but sometimes that mobile phone is still working. So again, if you're not tech savvy enough, you don't know how to get on Twitter, could have been a good reason to even set up on it, you can call on people, public relations people, legal management personnel, security. They can help you mobilize responses because perhaps you're going to need security to make sure you don't get looted. Perhaps you're going to need a legal team to assist you to get the money off the insurance company or stop suppliers suing you and so on. Any ideas on that, Michael? How did you communicate with people? Just literally hammered the phone line, or what did you do?
We not even that sophisticated. Drew up a great big sign and stuck it on the front window, Yvette.
Yeah, what did it say? What did that sign say?
I'll be back.
I'll be back, just like good old Arnie.
Absolutely, I'm a fan of... Oh, bugger it, why not? So I put up that I'll be back and put a mobile phone number on it.
Yep.
And yeah, that's what I did. And bugger it worked. I mean, it's not as good as all these other things that you talk about. There are obviously much better ways of doing it. The one thing I would like to add just on that previous slide that you had, I got swamped with offers of help, and I'm standing there and it was just too much. I have like a friend who's a lawyer who's saying, oh, do you need a hand? Or I've got a friend who's like the IT guy saying, oh, Michael, do you want us to put you on whatever it is, Twitter and all the other things? And just so many people are trying to help that you sort of stand there and think, oh, what do I do?
Sure.
And it's overwhelming. And if I'd had now, I came up with a plan a week later because, as I told you, one of my friends helped me plan and manage through. But yeah, at first, all these people want to help, and you're sort of struggling to accept the help.
Maybe a pride thing. So, I mean, I'm wondering whether you do have that next person, at least one other person, particularly if you're a small business owner, that can help be the front, if you like, so that you can be emotional and you can just do things behind the scenes so that they can sort of help you manage. Like, I just know I've got a friend, Wendy, who's just great in a crisis, and if anything happened, she'd be by my side and she'd be my best person. So perhaps you've said you had some good mates. I suppose they might have helped out here and there, but it was just you accepting that help and maybe encouraging them to take that role on, maybe.
But also, yeah, I mean, recognise that one of the things, as I said, a week down the track, one of my friends sent me a disaster recovery plan for one of the big banks, which he probably wasn't supposed to do, so I'm not going to say who it was or which bank. But he said, look, Michael, just take the headings out of this, write the headings down, he said, and then try and put a person into each one and then ring them. And so I did that, and suddenly I could ring one of my staff and say, look, I can't do this, you got to do that. And I could ring one of my mates and say, look, mate, can you do this for me? And by giving me 6 headings of, who's going to run your business, who's telling your customers, who's dealing with your legal problems, that sort of thing, he got me thinking again and planning, and of course, as soon as I delegated the work, it started to happen much more effectively.
Sure.
And my staff then could kick in and really do more than just mop out muddy floors. They could really fire up. And we reopened at my kitchen table, and we got mobile phones and all that mobile things you put in laptops, and we set it all up on my kitchen table. And for the first 3 weeks after the flood, we ran this business from my kitchen table, and we had a plan. As I said, a week afterwards, I nicked these ideas from my friend, and we had a plan.
Sure. But I guess the message I'm hearing from all of that is, as hard as it may be, particularly for some people, to accept help, if there's any time to do it, it's a disaster. So don't be afraid to ask for that help and accept that help as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, we've only got a few more slides, people, so I hope you're finding this good content, and I'm just, loving your sense of humour, Michael, and your positivity throughout it all. But stick with me through just a few more, and then you can ask myself or Michael anything you like. Recovery, how will you bounce back? So we've heard some ideas on how Michael has bounced back, starting from the kitchen table, but just to define it, it's talking about continuity and restoration, recovery of resources. So straight after the crisis, you really need to assess the damage, which I'm sure Michael did, including injury to any people, staff, clients, other members of the public. Yes, you are responsible for them if they are anywhere near your premises. Any damage to your reputation. There were opportunists, of course, as there always are in a disaster, who tried effectively to say they're out of business now, so deal with us. Any impacts on your business functions. So Michael, of course, realised, seeing that equipment submerged, I'm sure that was going to have a massive impact, as he talked about, and that he would have to make ulterior arrangements. Damage to buildings, equipment, company vehicles and stock. I mean, we haven't even touched on it, Michael, but you must have lost oodles of stock and clothing, I presume.
Yeah, I did, but that's okay, because everyone says I got lousy taste in clothes, so it was a chance to replace it all anyway.
Sure. The staff reactions is something I think I will highlight, because you do need to take on board that different people deal with things in different ways, and in a disaster emotions can come out. Anger, as Michael's been candid and honest enough to share, can be one of them. Sadness, just total nerve-breaking meltdown. So you need to remember to be a human, and that it's not all about cleaning up and getting on with it. You also need to stop now and then and have a cuddle and have a hug and maybe even a cry. I mean, were there moments like that for you, Michael?
I'm not big into the crying side of things if I can avoid it.
Yeah.
But definitely I have three sort of staff, permanent staff, as well as plenty of high school kids who come in and do odd jobs for me and things like that. My staff rely on this job to pay their mortgage, yeah? So you can imagine they've just seen their jobs washed away. It was essential to reassure them that we were going to get back into business. So, and one of them, they all dealt with it differently, but they were pretty scared and worried. So it was really important to say to them, look, we're going to get through this. And so that, as I said, we sat around the kitchen table. I got everyone out to my place. We sat around the kitchen table, and I said, okay, here's the plan. And they said, okay, what's the plan? I said, right, it's real simple. Here's the list of all our customers. You're going to start ringing all our customers and tell them we'll be back in business real soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you're going to ring all our suppliers and tell them we'll be back in business real soon, and I'll ring all the people I owe money to and tell them that they're not going to get paid, which is sort of satisfying in a way. And, you know, and I said, then we're going to ring them all. And then if anyone asks us, we're going to tell them not only are we going to be back in business, but we've got a plan. I said, as soon as anyone says, are you guys okay? So look, we've got a plan and we're going to be fine. And my staff looked at me and said, have we got a plan? I said, no. I got no idea what I'm doing. But if you keep telling everyone we'll be back,
sooner or later they'll believe you. Yep. Yep.
And the other thing is, once my staff started telling everybody, oh, listen, we'll be back. Look, Michael's got a plan. They knew I was lying. They knew I didn't have a plan. But just by saying it, we'll be back, we'll be back. At the end of that second week, they said to me, boss, we're going to do this. Now, to put it in context, they either worked for no money or for half pay. So I said, look, I'm broke. So I took all the money I had, which believe me was not very much. I put the bank account in front of them and said, okay, what's your mortgage? And they said, boss, by the end of the month we need this much money to pay the mortgage. My husband can take care of the rest. Or, Michael, hey, you know, my wife's job's fine. So, and we split the money between us 4 ways and said, okay, we got 4 weeks.
Sure.
And that's, they could see that was all we had. We split it within 4 weeks. We, as I said, we'd gone to my competitors. We had, you know, jobs on, and we had people believing that we were back in business.
Amazing what you can do with a, you know, a tight deadline and just confidence and a good team as well, I suppose.
A great team.
Yep. All right, well, let's wrap up because I really want to give everyone the opportunity to ask you questions, Michael, because you've just been fantastic. But look, the summary of today's presentation is you want that safety net. You can see that guy, his suitcase may be flying out with all his important papers, but these types of things we're talking about today will save you from falling into a bit of despair. So have a go bag or a grab bag. We talked about that and all the things you should have in it. Identify the risks to your business because everybody's a difference. Just because Michael shared his story, he operates in a certain industry, in a certain location, with certain equipment, etc., that may not be the case for you. You need to have a business continuity plan. That's what BCP stands for, which is the stuff we've been talking about today. Michael's reiterated, and I've reminded you, that cloud computing and backups off-site are extremely important. And you know what? Despite disasters, computers fail. So you need to be doing this on a regular basis. And if you say how regular, my answer is always how much are you prepared to lose. If you do a lot of work in a day, or your staff do, you should be backing up every day. If a week is okay and you reckon you can recover from that, well, then maybe every week. But I imagine it won't be much more than that. But at the short of it, I encourage you to go away from today, look at the workbook and prepare yourselves a business continuity plan and spread the word. Please help other people around that you may know in business because this is so useful. So where do you go to get these step-by-step instructions? Well, a workbook's been sent to you, but there's also this link here, which I'll get Jag to text you now, so you can just click on it, and if you've got the time and you're all on focus now, maybe you can even just send that out. Start looking at that this afternoon. Jag, could we just get that texted out? You're onto that? And while he's doing that, I'll just move on and give you the opportunity to ask questions. So if you'd like to ask myself or Michael anything at all from today's presentation, simply raise your hand and I will unmute you and we can have a little chat. Don't be shy. It's usually useful. Joseph has got his hand up. Thank you for volunteering. Joseph, are you there?
Yes, I am, Yvette.
How did you find today?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good.
Great.
But I just wanted to ask Michael a question.
Sure.
If that's all right.
Of course.
Yeah, mate.
I was just wondering, Michael, from the time that the floods happened, before the floods happened, I should say, with the situation you were in with your business, how long do you think it will take you now to get back to that level?
It's going to take me till the end of this year to stabilise my finances and I'll either still be in business at the end of this year or I'll be broke. But working to the plan we're on, we should have sort of, the various financial problems sorted by the end of this year. That means I basically pretend that 2011 didn't happen, and I will, in 2012, set about achieving the sort of things that I was hoping to do this year. It's at least a year that it's going to knock me back, possibly two.
It's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I see here, Joseph, you did kindly text us in earlier that your business in Rockley and Townsville were both affected. Would you like to share with the rest of the listeners how they were affected, what the businesses were?
Sure. Yeah. I actually work for a company. I'm an employee, and it's quite a varied manufacturer of portable buildings. And we opened up, believe it or not, a site in Rockley in Grindle Road. We got the lease. We signed the lease 2 weeks before the floods hit, and so it went through and destroyed the stock that was actually in place there. And then we had Cyclone Yasi in Townsville, and as a result of Cyclone Yasi and the effects on the business up there, we did a post-cyclone review up there, which was really, it was an adjunct to our business continuity plan, because we didn't have one before that, Yvette.
Wow, and geez, you're a bit unlucky being hit in Brisbane and Townsville, having businesses in those two locations. I mean, what's the chances?
Yeah, but it's a big state, Queensland, isn't it? And you've just got to roll with the punches.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful place to live 99% of the time. It's just that 1% we're just going to put up with the natural disasters. And you know my spin on it, being a Kiwi and having grown up with earthquakes and the possibility of volcanoes, at least we get warning here. You get warnings about floods and cyclones because there is never any warnings with earthquakes and volcanoes.
That's exactly right.
Thank you, Joseph, for sharing. Unless you've got anything else to share, I might mute you now.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Yvette.
No worries. Thanks for joining us. And I'll just give anyone else the opportunity to ask a final question. I note the time's now 1:30 and I don't want to keep you because you've probably got businesses to get back to. But please don't log off because I've got a couple of great links to share for future info. Anyone? Last chance? Hands up. No, not seeing anyone taking the opportunity. Well, I've mentioned a couple of times that we have run quite a few webinars now. All of them are recorded, and if you found today useful, sometimes I do interview other people, kind of like what I've done with Michael. Sometimes it's just myself sharing knowledge, a specialty in the area. So if you go to that link on YouTube, you can watch topics on social media, cloud computing, finances, attracting more business, sort of marketing topics. They're all free, and they're all great resources produced in a collaboration between ourselves and the Queensland Government. So please do go take a look and tell your friends. I want you to also know that DD has a very extensive, very resource-rich website at business.qld.gov.au. In fact, it's so big, I suggest rather than just sort of mooching around that you hit the search function, go and look for something specific because chances are it is there. And there's also, a lot of people don't realise, a 1300 number. You can call them anytime about anything you may need assistance with in business, and if they can't help you, chances are they will put you onto someone who can. They're both free, excellent services, so please make the most of them. Now, as part of our requirement with DD, we do require you to fill in a survey because we really want to know what you thought of today and what we could improve in future. So Jag is just about to send you a link, or in fact he already has. It's the SurveyMonkey link he sent, surveymonkey.com/s. Will only take you 1 to 2 minutes to fill in, so if you could just take the time now, we'll leave that up on screen while you click through and complete that survey. So if you could all perhaps start clicking on that link and filling it in, that would be great. So at this point, I'd just really like to thank Michael very much for jumping online and sharing, giving up an hour of his time when he's obviously got a business that he's fighting to keep with tooth and nail. And good on you, Michael. You've just got such an amazing spirit and you're a real inspiration.
Yeah, no worries.
And well done, your first webinar. I think you did pretty well for a newbie.
This is all groovy, this stuff, isn't it?
Pretty cool, hey? So tell your mates and get on that maybe you can have a beer on Friday night and watch those YouTube clips, hey? Bit of learning and beer.
I'm going to tell my kids.
Good on you. Okay, well, thanks so much. I'm going to wrap
You're
up
welcome.
and sign off. And, yeah, we look forward to seeing you on future events soon. Look out on our website or Dee Dee's website for future events, which are free. Good
Thanks,
afternoon.
Yvette. See you.
Bye.